Welcome back to MoCo. Listen, we have a doctor in the building. Dr. Neetu Abad, Senior Behavioral Scientist and lead of the Behavioral Health Coordinating Unit in the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control at the Centers for Disease Control and Preventions. Woo, baby, that's the CDC. If y'all didn't know, I just gave y'all the full thing, okay? Thank you for joining us, Neetu.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so listen, we know that mental health is a very important issue, but mental health is also a public issue. When did it become large enough to be a public issue?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question, because for a long time, like, I'm a psychologist, I'm a trained psychologist, social psychologist. And when we think about the way our mind works, we've usually thought about it on an individual level. Yeah. Like, how are you doing? How are you doing? And we haven't always thought about it at the population level. And when people come to crisis, we think about our clinical environments, our clinics, a psychologist, psychiatrist, maybe a social worker talking one-on-one. Yeah. But over the last, 4 or 5 years, we have seen a rise in the numbers of people who are struggling, who are being diagnosed with mental health conditions. And it's become now much more of a national conversation, a national issue. And we need to stop thinking of it as sort of an individual level concern and think about what's going on with our society, what's going on with our community, how are people thriving and living. When we take things up at a population level, that's when we can start talking about prevention. And we can start talking about, how do we prevent people from getting into crisis? How do we prevent mental health conditions from occurring or getting to a point of needing a diagnosis? How do we make sure people are experiencing well-being and kind of living their best lives?
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's interesting you say that, because when you say about like people and preventing it, I instantly think of like our younger gen that seem like, I don't know if it's being more aware because of social media or if life is just tougher, but it seems like there's a lot more younger kids that are in a mental crisis, in a sense of like, they're either talking to a therapist, they will be talking to a therapist, or you can just flat out tell that they are depressed. Like, is that like, because I asked this before about sick, do people just seem like there's more people sick, or are actual people, really going through a crisis, more people?
Yeah, we are experiencing a mental health crisis, and it's really showing up in our youth. Like, the data show that there are more youth that are experiencing crisis, expressing distress, showing up in distress. And that is really concerning. That trend really has gone on now for 4 or 5 years, really seeing that increase. And more recently, we've started to see that decrease. In the last 4 or 5 years, what's happened? We've had a national pandemic, right? And that really affected our youth. Schools were closed. People couldn't see their friends for years. And those things kind of manifested in our community, in our societies, and our youth were experiencing that. Thankfully, our latest data show that some of that's going back down.
Really?
So, yeah. So now we have, 4 in 10 high school students telling us that their feelings kind of persistently sad, feelings of hopelessness. That's actually a decrease from where we saw.
That's 40%.
And that's a decrease.
What?
That's a decrease. But it's a good thing that we're seeing that decrease. We're seeing things kind of return, people developing their connections, or social connections, their relationships.
Do you see more boys, girls? Is it harder on a different gender, or what?
It's more girls.
Wow.
It's more girls showing up with feelings of sadness, hopelessness, kind of being in that crisis state. Part of it is we have more awareness, and we have more ability to talk about these things and sort of surface our mental health concerns. I think as the nation went through that pandemic, the nation went through a collective trauma. Yeah. So we have more ability to sort of talk about it. And so people might be more willing to name it. But really, the youth live in the society that we're in. And so they're being affected by everything, just, along with everybody else. And there's a lot of stressors in our world.
Definitely. I'm curious, too, because just from the pandemic tip, it's like, I'm definitely a different human after the pandemic. Like, it's like, I'm probably a little bit more germy in general. And this is coming from somebody that wore a mask on the planes before the pandemic hit. My teammates used to make fun of me all the time, and now look. But side note, I'm just curious, like, is there any way to track what it did to adults to pandemic? Like, have y'all studied specifically, like, post-pandemic? What did it look like before? What did it look like after?
Yeah, CDC collects a lot of data on mental health, actually. And we have behavioral surveys like the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System. We have the Youth Risk Behavior Surveillance System. We have the National Health Interview Survey. So I'm just naming these because you can find information about them. But we have indicators around well-being. We talk about social support, feelings of isolation. And, all of these were pronounced kind of people were struggling, and we saw that in our data. And people are also, they're getting what they need now.
Wow.
They're getting better.
So I'm curious, like, as we're getting into this fall winter season, and I've seen that almost affect people's mental health. It's like, we know it's going to be darker sooner. We already had daylight saving times. It's going to be darker sooner. The weather is going to be a little gloomy. It's going to be cooler. I love the fall weather. Like that world is my favorite. But I also have seen that it has effects on people. Is there data that shows like something that happens in the winter fall seasons?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question, because I also love fall. Yeah, and I love sometimes curling up with a book and being in darkness,
curling up with a bae. Yeah, shouts to my bae. Hey, baby.
And feelings of sadness are normal. Let's just say that. I mean, everybody feels sad sometimes.
Yeah.
But there are definite patterns, and there are some folks who are sort of more affected by the shortening of days, by the lack of daylight or sunlight, by not, having those long days to be outside. And it gets colder and you're kind of more inside. And so there is something called seasonal affective disorder, and people do, develop and have that. It can be related to brain chemistry. It can be related to all kinds of things. But there are ways to understand it. There are ways to treat it, and there are ways to kind of overcome it.
Wow. It's interesting because I just started to think about what makes me love fall and winter so much. And really, it's like, when I think about fall, winter, I think about the holidays. It's like, this is the stretch. You go October, we got Halloween. November, you got Food and Family Day. And then December, you got Christmas and all the various holidays, depending on what you celebrate. And it's like, I think of that as so happy, but I also am starting to see that holidays don't necessarily correspond with happiness for everybody, right?
That's right. It's absolutely right. And in my family, we've got Diwali, and we also have all 4 of our birthdays going from October to December. So there's just an incredible amount of things happening, right? But, the holidays are not the same for everybody. And even one person can have a really great experience one day, and the next week it'll be an event with some stressors. It'll be you see somebody that maybe you haven't seen in a long time. They bring up things, right? So holidays, we kind of have this idea like it's just endless joy. It's just everyone's merry. But the truth is we experience things differently.
Definitely.
We're on social media. Also, we're seeing what other people are doing. Maybe we're playing some comparison games with ourselves about what we're doing. And so it can bring up different feelings in different people. And it absolutely, people can develop the holiday blues.
Wow. That's a real thing. I mean,
sadness.
we say the holiday blues or, the winter blues or whatnot, but that's statistically, this is a real thing.
It does happen. You do see kind of more, a little bit more anxiety, depression, those kinds of symptoms. People kind of thinking about, can I afford travel? Can I afford gifts? Can I, see my family this year? Am I going to be able to do things as I want to do them? Changes in school. So routine changes, people kind of get knocked out of their routine. All of that stuff that comes like kind of the stress that compiles. So there's joy, and then there's also sadness sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, come on, Inside Out. Listen, I had to Inside Out teaches you a lot. Like
it really does.
Joy wouldn't feel so good if it wasn't for pain. There's a balance. I have to understand. I'm kind of I'm one of these people that on the spectrum of it, I'm probably a little too far on the joy side, so you
can't be too far on the joy side.
Okay, I like that, because I'm gonna find a good part of everything. But I'm curious, you talked about social media. Are there studies that y'all are doing specifically on that? Because I feel like social media and your mental health, there has to be even me, there's probably somebody cussing me out on social media right now, at all times when I go to, for sure. All the time when I go to check my Twitter, there's somebody that's saying some really wild things to me, for various reasons. But for me, I'm an athlete. So it's, I have the thickest of skin. It doesn't affect me any. I don't even see it. I scroll to the good comments. But I'm sure that there's an effect on humans when it comes to social media. Do you guys track that, follow that?
Yeah, there's so much good work happening on understanding what the effect of social media is on our brains and our behavior and our thinking and that kind of thing. And the truth is it's mixed. We know that there can be what's called like sort of problematic use of social media. It's a certain number of hours. Maybe it's more than 3 hours in a day or something like that.
I think I'm problematic.
Right? When you're
might be toxic.
When you're on there. And that is really can be associated with all kinds of negative effects on your health, your well-being, your thinking, your stress levels, all that kind of thing. But also we know that people are actually connecting on social media in real ways. If you are a member of like a marginalized community or you're struggling with connection and you find connection on social media, that actually does help. So it's not like a pure negative, and it's not the best thing in the world either, right? There's like this middle ground that we need to kind of strike with social media. But we always tell people like unplug if you need to.
Yeah.
Especially during the holidays where we see you could be thinking about or seeing people doing things or experiencing things, or like, I should be doing it. Just unplug.
No, I agree with that because social media, the reason I'm toxic, you said like 3 hours, is that like the marker where you see like, is it above 3?
One marker. It's
one marker. So above 3, you might be doom scrolling a little bit. Below 3, you should be in the clear. I definitely, on a lot of days, I think I'm above 3. But to your point, like I got a whole community on there. Like I got a squad that tells me good morning every morning. Like shouts to our mirror, my squad. Like there's people that say it every single morning. Katie, shouts to the crew because I type good morning, they say it back. I say, well, how you doing? Untouchable Kaz. Like I'm really saying names that I talk to every day. I feel like social media and where it's heading, like I feel like it's almost going to be our socializing. It seems like we're getting to a point. Is that like do you see that in the future being a health crisis? Like it's like right now we have a mental health crisis, but the more we get tech and the more we don't talk and the more we're inside, is something happening with that? Like I know this is socio at this point a little bit, but it's like I feel like my niece goes to Georgia State and they stay inside their room. She's in a quad apartment and the common area is empty all the time. They're all in their rooms socializing with other humans, but it's like I find that interesting that the socialization is just like coming further back.
Yeah, we do want people to connect in meaningful ways. Like what does that mean? So if you're connecting on social media, is it meaningful to you? Are you getting meaning from that? Or is it sort of like, a temporary kind of boost and then it goes away? Like these are things that we're sort of trying to look at and help people understand. But social connection is important. Social connection is really important wherever you're getting that. If you're getting that, through your social media interactions, or if you're getting that in life, right? And so we always tell people, look at those aspects of your life and like, what can you do to actually connect with people? Is it like finding an interest group? Is it, finding a hobby where you connect with other people? And during the holidays, as we're talking about, that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Neetu, listen, before you go, we like to play a little game. You ready to play? We're going to put 60 seconds. Amena, you got it? All right, we're going to put 60 seconds on the clock and rapid fire. I'm about to ask you some questions. You ready?
Yes.
Let's get it. All right, Amena, let's go. Okay, a sport you can play really well.
Swimming.
Oh, nice. Swimming. A sport you're really bad at.
I'm going to go with volleyball.
Okay, volleyball. Me too. Oh, me too. Okay. If you could have one sports superpower, what would it be?
Could I fly? Could that be a sports superpower?
I feel like that's a superhuman superpower, but I like that. And if you could fly, that would be the sports. You would be dunking. You would be catching all the passes. So yes, it is. If you could brag that you beat one athlete at any sport, who would it be?
Well, I grew up in Chicago in the 90s, so that's Michael Jordan basketball.
Okay, MJ, baby. I love that. All right. What would your walkout song be?
Run the World, Girls by Queen Bee.
The girls who run the world, girls. I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today on Montgomery Company. Neetu, listen. She talked about your mental health in the seasons. Take care of yourself. Like the whole thing about mental health is that like you got to take care of your own. There's not somebody else that's going to take care of your mental health. That's what I've learned in sports. But don't listen to me. We had a professional here. Listen to her. All right. And make sure y'all follow the CDC at CDC Gov. Stay tuned for more MoCo.
WABE.